Good morning, everyone. This is Dan Orchard with Fishing Partnership Support Services. Welcome to this week's webinar. We hope your families and friends are healthy. We know that these are difficult times financially. This week, we're going to talk about some of the ways the fishing community are adapting to that. With the loss of dine-in restaurant markets and the sharp reduction of many international markets, prices fell in most fisheries last month and are slow to rebuild. And while there's not a single solution to this, it's going to take support from the government, from communities, and from each other. So through the last 3 webinars, we focused on immediate financial assistance that's available. We focused on the loans from the SBA, some unemployment assistance for self-employed, and some other options. And some of those items have helped fishermen stay afloat. If you need that information, you can watch these recorded webinars on our webpage, and you can certainly reach out to one of our navigators. But those programs didn't work for everyone, or they don't make you whole necessarily. So today we're going to shift from government financial assistance, ways the fishing community is adapting to the loss of markets at a local level. There's been a strong demand for seafood by local customers, and getting it to them requires an understanding of permits and adapting methods. So today we're fortunate to have Story Reed from the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries on to talk about the retail boat permit and what it allows fishermen to sell directly to the public. Story's worked for DMF for 15 years, and he's currently the Permitting and Statistics Program Manager. He serves as the dealer permitting specialist. So we're grateful to have him on today to provide an overview and to answer any questions you have about permits. We also have 2 of our navigators on to manage questions from the audience and to facilitate. We have Maria Carpenter from our Gloucester office. She's the daughter of a fisherman, and having grown up in a fishing family, she has a keen awareness of the struggles and worries that can be part of that world. Her love of the community of Gloucester has been especially evident to us as she's helped people through this pandemic over the last couple of months. We have back this week, we have Morgan Eldridge, one of our navigators and community health workers on the Cape. Morgan's been at the forefront for us during this pandemic as it's developed, and she's been listening to the community like our other navigators and learning about resources and helping fishing families. She also knows the nuances of the fishing industry, having grown up in a fishing family. So today we also have some examples of ways the community is adapting to these local markets. We have Troy Durr from South Coast Direct Source Seafood. Troy's worked on fishing boats and has family and close friends in the fishing industry, but it's not his principal line of work. And he's going to talk about how in the last month and a half, he's become very involved in direct sales from lobstermen and scallopers to meet local demand. We also have Shireen Davis, the interim manager for Chatham Harvesters, a fishermen's cooperative on Cape Cod that links fishermen with opportunity. Shireen is a descendant of a founding family of Chatham, and she's made her life as a commercial weir fisherman, a seafood purveyor, and a visual artist. And her consultant company, Good Fish Commonwealth, supports commercial fishing and community sustainability projects in the region. Sharina also serves on the Chatham's Board of Selectmen as chairman. So she's going to talk about the ways the fishermen are connecting with restaurants, get prepared meals to families, and also on some direct sales to consumers. So we know these are not the only examples of ways fishermen and fishing communities are adapting, but these are a couple of good examples. So we invite our audience this week not only to ask questions, but also to come in with comments about what's working for them, and especially what's still needed and ways we can work together. So we'll be stronger as a community when we work together on these issues, and we appreciate everyone calling in or even just listening today. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom, our moderator, to talk about the ways that people can call in or get their comments in, and he's also going to walk through the agenda. So Tom, all yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you all for joining us today, both panelists and attendees. We have a pretty full roster of things to talk about today. Let's just go over that agenda right now. We're going to start off, as Dan mentioned, listening to Story Reed talk about the retail boat seafood dealer permit. After that, he's going to turn things over to selling direct from the boat with Troy Durr. And then we're going to hear from Shireen Davis, who's going to be talking about linking fishermen, restaurants, and local families. Right now, everybody is muted to facilitate the webinar, but that's going to be ending, obviously, when we move into our open Q&A session. And as Dan mentioned, the last three episodes, I should say, of our webinar, we've been taking a lot of questions. We want to hear stories about what's working for you as well as questions. So there are 2 ways that we're going to be hearing from you. The first is the raise your hand feature at the bottom. What you're going to do if you have a story to share or want to talk, you're just going to hit the raise your hand button. That'll alert me and the other moderators that you're wanting to talk. I'll call you out. unmute you, and then you could share your story or ask your question. But if you do have a question, it's probably gonna be best to ask that in the Q&A feature, which is down below as well. It's a text feature. You can certainly just type in your question there, and that'll be going directly to our panelists, and our moderators are gonna be answering those questions for you. This is gonna be not televised. It's gonna be recorded. It's gonna be out on the website, the fpcovid19.org website, for your information. But with that, why don't I turn things over to Story Reed, and we'll get us started talking about the retail boat seafood dealer permit.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, all. Thank you for having me to talk about the retail boat permit today. It's certainly become one of our more popular permitting questions over the past 6 or 8 weeks. The retail boat seafood dealer permit allows commercial fishermen to sell their catch of live lobsters and live crabs and whole fin fish from the boat, dockside. Fin fish can be gutted at sea, but not filleted or otherwise processed. Regulations don't allow shellfish sales directly from the boat, such as clams, oysters, whole scallops, or conch. So those species cannot be sold directly to consumers. But shucked at sea scallop meat sales are being allowed under a letter of authorization pilot program with certain labeling conditions. This pilot program for scallop meat has been ongoing for a few years, but interest has peaked this spring. Commercial fishermen must be properly permitted by the state of Massachusetts or the National Marine Fishery Service to catch whatever they are selling. We get requests to allow the sale of shellfish directly to the public, but it's not allowed, as I mentioned, under DMF rules or public health rules. Shellfish sales have to go through a wholesale dealer facility. The retail boat permit was expanded several years ago to allow commercial lobstermen to transport their live lobsters and crabs to restaurants and consumers. Live lobsters are considered a low-risk seafood item, so the Department of Public Health was comfortable with that allowance. There are weekly electronic dealer reporting requirements that come with this permit. Dealer reporting is how we monitor quota-managed fisheries, so this reporting is critical, and we monitor compliance closely. State-only commercial lobstermen that are only selling live lobsters and crabs are exempt from this additional dealer reporting. They simply report their sales on their normal trip-level reports. But when we issue permits, we provide all this reporting information to permit holders. Historically, we've issued about 100 retail boat permits per year. Activity has been limited in the past and has largely consisted of the sale of live lobsters by commercial lobstermen. We've had an immediate increase in interest for the retail boat dealer permit since mid-March at the beginning of the COVID-19 public health crisis. Because of the increased interest, our shift to working from home, and the need to issue these permits quickly, we waived the $65 fee for the rest of 2020. Initially, we saw lobstermen getting these permits as their dealers closed their doors pretty quickly. Then we saw scallopers as we moved into April wanting to get this permit and the letter of authorization allowing the sale of scallop meat off the boat. And now also some commercial finfish fishermen are interested in the permit. So to date, we've issued about 200 of these retail boat dealer permits, which is double what we usually issue. And there's really still a steady stream of applications coming across our desks. So we've already doubled the number of permits we usually issue. Based on current market conditions, fishermen are either actively using them or getting the permits because they don't know what the summer will bring. The public response to local seafood has been incredible. We've all seen that, I think. There's a real strong demand for local seafood right now in retail stores and directly from the boat. We have heard from some municipalities and fishermen that the demand has been almost too strong in some cases in certain harbors, and there have been some social distancing and traffic issues. So that is something to keep in mind, and I'm sure Troy will mention that when he speaks. In terms of applying for the permit, our seafood dealer permit application can be found on our website, and through our retail boat frequently asked question sheet that's on the seafood dealer section of our website. The best way to contact us right now is through email, either one of our staff directly or our general marine fisheries email address. Because the fee has been waived for this permit, completed applications can be scanned and submitted electronically or through the mail if that's preferred. And we're doing our best to get the permits out as quickly as possible. If we have questions for permit holders, we'll be contacting them directly as fast as we can. So that's the general summary of the retail boat permit I have.
Story, thank you so much. I just want to see if we can ask you a couple questions that we've been getting from people. And one of them is, do federally permitted fishermen need a federal dealer permit from the National Marine Fisheries Service?
That's a good question. Yes, they do. So if a federally permitted fisherman wants to sell off the boat, if they're federally permitted for, say, live lobsters or multi-species groundfish, and they want to sell some whole fish off the boat, they do need to apply for and get a federal dealer permit. The National Marine Fisheries Service has provided some good information on getting these permits, and they've been getting them out very quickly. There's a link to some information on that in our frequently asked question sheet.
Thank you.
Dory, I have another question from some fishermen around. Does this permit allow me to deliver fish to consumers?
The only seafood product that can be transported under the authority of the retail boat permit is live lobsters and crabs. So those could be delivered to a restaurant or to a consumer under the authority of the permit, but finfish and scallop meat are not allowed to be transported. They have to be sold directly off the boat under this permit.
Okay, thank you.
Story, thank you so much for your helpful information and definitely helping out a lot of folks with those permits for sure. We're gonna now hear from Troy Durr, who is from South Coast Seafood Direct, and he's going to talk about his direct sales. Thank you, Troy. Go right ahead.
Hi, so as you just mentioned, I'm Troy. I started this page on Facebook, South Coast Direct Source Seafood, just as a way to help my uncle at first. His boat fell into the same problem a few other boats did, where the general places they would usually sell to just closed the doors and left them with no option of how to sell their lobsters. So I just figured with the power of social media, it wouldn't be too hard of a thing to do to, find a public, a group of people in the public that want that fresh seafood. So I created this page just, to help my uncle and his boss sell a few lobsters, which quickly turned into what it is now. I think we're about 6 weeks in, and the page has almost 14,000 people from the South Coast that are looking for fresh seafood. And I've just used it as a way that these guys can reach out to me, and they just let me know how many lobsters they have. And basically I just make a post. We created a website, which another great person in the area donated his time and built a website for free for us. So there's no cost associated with it. And it's really just grown exponentially over the last month, and the public's help we've had so far is amazing. And they've been able to support, 6 lobster boats to sell out their catch every time they've gone out. And we can't keep up with it. As Story had mentioned that, fishing's a little slow for these guys right now as opposed to this time last year. So maybe if it was, a lot better fishing, we wouldn't be keeping up with the demand. But right now, we cannot keep up with, the demand from the South Coast, which has been, a blessing to all these fishermen. So if there's anything you'd like me to touch upon, I'd be happy to. But basically, so far, it's just, this was all organic growth. We didn't expect what happened to happen. And it's just really been great for everyone involved.
I have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Okay. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've seen so far?
I think the biggest challenge that we had right off the bat was the first 2 weeks when the page wasn't very big. Traffic wasn't an issue. But the first week we had 500 members. The second week we had 2,000. And then by the third week we had 8,000 members. and that was not a growth we expected to have. And on that third week, we had a line of cars about 2.5 miles long. And that was because we were operating off a first come, first served basis, because the goal obviously is to help these guys sell out their catch. So luckily, I'm a pretty organized person, and that's where I can help these fishermen. So we built basically an online ordering form. There's no money involved. I don't touch any of the money. It just basically, you know, these guys keep live tracks of how many lobsters they have throughout the day. So on their way in, they just shoot me a call or an email, and they say, hey, I have 300 lobsters to sell. So I do a set amount sale. And then, you know, when that sells out, I remove the post, which we found out we had to do, because even once it would sell out, people would all flock down to the docks and hope that they can get the extras. And I basically just give time slot pickups. So now, where originally the first 2-3 weeks we would have 100, 200 cars down there all at once, we, over the last, you know, 3 or 4 pickup days, haven't seen more than 5 or 6 cars down on the dock at a time, which has been great for alleviating traffic and, you know, keeping the harbor master happy in the town of Fairhaven, where, you know, we're lucky enough to be able to do this. So it's been pretty good so far. That was definitely the big problem.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's really helpful. And I imagine, you know, with that, there's some issues with having to keep everybody safe and social distancing. So I know you said that you're giving out time slots. Does that seem to be the best way? Is there anything else you're doing?
For us, it's definitely, it helped at least with the amount of people down there. And then, you know, if we can communicate to 5 to 10 cars at a time. It's hard when there's 50 plus cars and you can't talk to people that are hundreds of yards down the road. So with us, I send out a pretty detailed email about how the process works for these people. You know, I let them know to bring their cooler, bag, and be ready. Please don't get out of your car. And they pull up right up beside the boat, and basically one of the crew members on the boat or one of their kids or wives comes up, and I have to physically bring a list with me, and I go down there and meet them. And I check names off the list to make sure they're on the pre-order form, because we found a lot of people were just pretending they had orders, which the first few times, that was another issue we had, where we would actually sell out when we would always keep a little buffer. We found that people were just saying, oh yeah, I had an order, and we were just taking people's word for it. So now, you know, in the email, it says, please have your container ready in, you know, the back seat of the trunk. Someone wearing a mask and gloves will come up and get that from you, verify how many lobsters you would like. And, you know, so basically they pull up, we check their name off the list. One of the people from the boat grabs the container, brings it down, and they all have scales on the boat. So they weigh out the lobsters, you know, bring it back up, give them a price. And, you know, if they need to get change, they will. But with the amount of support that we've had, a lot of these people just want to support the fishermen. So most people, you know, if it's a few dollars, they say, you know, you guys work hard, tell the fishermen to, you know, keep the change, which, you know, makes them incredibly happy.
That's great. Well, Troy, thank you so much. And I'm sure people will have some questions for you
Thank
as we
you.
keep going. You're welcome.
I want to thank Troy and Story for giving us all that information. It's great. I do want to introduce Shireen Davis from the Chatham Harvesters on how she is linking fishermen, restaurants, and restaurants with local families for a free meal plan.
Thank you, Maria, for having me today, and thank you, the Fishing Partnership, as well. Some of the things that the Chatham Harvesters is a fishermen's own cooperative in Chatham, and in result of the pandemic issues that were going on, obviously there's a lot of people have lost their jobs. People are don't have a lot of food, and our food pantries are taking care of some people, but a group of restaurants and a nonprofit community service program reached out to the Harvesters to see how we could get fresh seafood into a free meal program that the nonprofit was working on. So basically, a restaurant had created on their website an ability for somebody to very anonymously or in a very dignified way purchase a free meal from them and be able to, and it was subsidized by a fund from this nonprofit. So what we did is we linked up, and because we provide opportunity for fishermen in our community, We identified through different relationships we had, people that were shell fishermen and fishermen that were struggling a little bit with not being able to sell their catch. So the matchup came as a result of that. So we looked for brick and mortar seafood permitted facilities to help us with the shellfish side of getting shellfish to restaurants. And we used the retail boat permit concept to link the restaurants to boats that were landing scallops and monkfish. They would go down to the dock and do that. So far, the organization and us have been able to facilitate probably about most of the restaurants in Chatham are working this program. So a family in need can go on, order food, and go pick it up from the restaurant and have a good meal for their family. It's a good concept that has been working. One of the things that is a benefit for it is we've provided an added income to the shellfish fishermen and the fishermen in the town. It's supported, it's subsidized at this time, but it is linking local sourced food through the restaurant systems to people who might not typically have locally sourced seafood on their plates at any given time. The idea is it's healthy, it's fresh, and it's cooked well by the restaurants. And we're very proud of this program. It is in direct result of what is happening right now, but it's something that we think is a powerful message to a lot of our community members, community people, neighbors about what is out there, what is available in your own neighborhood, in your own off your own docks, and how you can get it. It's building relationships is basically what's happening, and it's a benefit across the board. That's all I have right now.
Thank you. Go ahead, Morgan, did you have questions? Thank you, Shireen, for that. That sounds like a great program. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who is going to open up the Q&A, and he will give the process on the Q&A, and then we can open that up for questions and answers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you all panelists. Right now, we want to give you a chance to talk with us and our panelists, ask some questions you may have, share some stories with what's been working for you in regards to your business. As I mentioned earlier, just to reiterate, we have the raise your hand feature. If you want to share your story, just simply go down below, click the raise your hand. That'll show up on my monitor here, and I'll be calling people one at a time and unmuting you. Once you hear your name, you can just tell your story or share what you have to share. And then as in regards to questions and answers, just use that Q&A feature down below, type in your question, and Morgan and Maria will be fielding those. So with that said, I'll turn things back over to Morgan and Maria.
Thank you, Tom. All right, so we do have a few questions already in the Q&A. Specifically looks like they would be going to Story.
I think Maria is having internet issues. Story. Are you good, Maria?
Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I lost some internet service here. Sorry.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the first question was, how does the fisherman get paid from you?
That would be for Troy, right?
I'm not sure. They didn't specify who they're asking. So
Story from Nancy. What is the website or the email address for the application?
Sure. So our Division of Marine Fisheries website is mass.gov/marine fisheries. And that will take you to the Division of Marine Fisheries homepage, and you can navigate from there to the seafood and bait dealer page and find the application. Mass.gov is also pretty searchable. So if you just go to mass.gov and search seafood dealer permit application, you'll find it. I think later in the slides, we also give the URL for our frequently asked question document, and it's linked in there as well.
Thank you.
Okay. The next question is getting a retail seafood permit the same in New York? This is a question from Vincent.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I do know that in Rhode Island, they recently went to emergency rulemaking to create this permit. They didn't have it, but because of all the increased interest since mid-March, they've recently created one. I don't know what the procedure is in New York.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. What price do you pay? So I'm not sure who these questions go to. From Judy. It may be for Troy. It may be for Story.
I think she's talking about the application.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the fee for the retail boat permit is usually $65 for Mass residents, but we've waived it for this year, so there's no fee for the permit.
Okay, great. Let me see. Is it possible to estimate how much of the strength of a local demand for the direct sales is due to the pandemic and how much due to the normal local demand?
I'll take that one, Maria, if you want. If you go to the New York Times, just recently, this morning, had an article in the paper that said a quarantine surprise, more Americans are eating more seafood right now. I think that the idea of trusting your food right now is important to many people. So I really believe that the interest in local seafood is probably part of that. The idea that it's a community-based endeavor, people are feeling more emotionally attached to their towns and their family and neighbors at this time. I think going forward, it's a great educational piece for the consumer to say, hey, I can source my food locally, and this is how I can do it. So I think in the long time, there'll be many people looking at this model and seeing how it will be building for the next seafood wave that will come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Shireen. We have a couple questions from Vincent, and what about selling fin fish from the boat? And then he also has another, but we can answer that one first. So selling the fin fish from the boat, is that
Yep.
a different process or?
The retail boat permit does allow the sale of whole fin fish. It could be gutted at sea like haddock or cod, but whole fin fish from the boat directly to the public. So that's allowed.
Okay. And Vincent also asks, what is the list of other permits that are needed to sell direct besides the dealer permit and the HMS?
So it's the Massachusetts retail boat permit and then the federal dealer permit. And he brings up a good point there about highly migratory species. We have an inquiry into the National Marine Fisheries Service about whether highly migratory species can be sold directly from the boat. We will post an answer to that on our frequently asked question sheet once we get it, because I think he's onto something there, that there's federal dealer permits for lobster and multi-species. Those are issued out of the the Gloucester office of the National Marine Fisheries Service. And then there's separately the highly migratory species permitting issues at the federal level. So we'll get the answer to that and post it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And I do have a question for Troy. Troy, this is from Judy. How does the fisherman get paid from you?
So that's actually a question I get all the time, because people assume that because I created this page that I'm like a big hub for this money. But all I'm really doing is advertising it for these people, because a lot of these captains might have Facebook, but they don't really know how to use it. So that's also why all payments are done upon picking up the seafood, because essentially all I'm doing for these guys is throwing up an advertisement. So because people ask that a lot, they say, why can't I pay for my seafood while I get my pre-order? It's because I'm not a licensed retailer of seafood. So it is something, obviously, as this has grown exponentially, and the question brought, how many of these people, is sustainable? And we get asked that a lot, how do they get paid by me? They don't. They get paid right from the consumer. They keep all the money, and, they pay their crew however they usually do. Some of the bigger boats might use a settlement house, so their money goes right to their accountants, and other guys handle it themselves. But I don't touch money ever with any of this, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, that's perfect. Not to be the middleman, but you're just advertising for them. That's great. We appreciate everything you're doing. All right, I think.
There's another question for Troy. Sorry, Troy.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
One thing that you've been doing is having fishermen post photos and videos on social media for the work and the days on the water. Can you talk about the public's reaction you've seen from that?
We thought of it as an idea because, as you touched upon, or it had been touched upon today, that like knowing where your food comes from right now is very important. But over the last few years has grown exponentially, farm shares and, farm to table movement. So we all thought it would be a cool idea for these fishermen to kind of post pictures or little clips of, what it's like to be a fisherman out there, because I think the number one question I get, and I'm not even kidding, 20 times a day is there a lobster boat out today? And it might be blowing 40 miles an hour and downpouring, and people don't understand that, these guys really work around the weather, and their job's very weather dependent. So, when they're feeling a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind at home and they don't think it's too bad, when they, one of those guys is out there and they post that video, it really, helps the public realize the hard work that's going into seafood, and, partially why your seafood is somewhat expensive. It's a little less expensive when you're buying directly from these guys, but we just thought it'd be a great interactive way for people to really learn a little more about the fishing industry and the work that these guys put in. And also on the days we're not doing anything, keep people involved with, the fishing industry to try to keep the interest high.
There's another question for you. What is the average price for a lobster? Is it day to day, or is it a fixed price? How are you doing that?
So the goal that we set from the beginning was to make the fishermen more money than they would selling right to the auction or the fish house, but save the public money to make it worth their time. So far it hasn't changed from the $6.50 a pound. At first we were trying to let the captains, it's completely up to them, but some of them were selling size, under a pound and a half for $6, and anything a pound and a half or bigger for $7. But then we just found the amount of time that would take each interaction, because it has to be weighed out per car, was just taking too long. So now we're doing, as it's generally called, the run. So you just get a mixed bag of lobsters. It's $6.50 a pound. And the goal is to always stay below fish market prices, but a little higher. Like, and make it worth the fisherman's time to spend an extra 2 to 3 hours doing this, and also make it worth the public's time to come down. So the price will change with the market. I've been, putting that in posts, but generally for the last few weeks, it's stayed stable because there hasn't been much of a change that we've seen so far.
That's great. Thank you. Tom, I think that's all the questions we have.
That sounds great. Thank you all. We have one comment from Mayor Safadia Deacon, and I apologize first and foremost if I totally obliterated your name. Correct me when you come on, but I'm going to allow you to talk. Why don't you come join us?
Can you hear me?
Safadia, you out there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you all. You know what? I'm on a conference call. I have my HR. It's it's a trying time for all of us, no matter what industry we're in and how we're trying to do the best. But I really appreciate your programs and the partnership to come forward, because it gives a sense of my fishing industry that they belong to. Because I know a lot of us, we're focusing right now on tourism and restaurants, but it all adds in all of our restaurants. And, you know, and I don't know if Legal Seafoods is on here and everything else, they're all saying that if it wasn't for the industry, we really can't survive. And that DMF video that went out, if you can keep doing those in different ports, that would be tremendous, because that's what brings up the sales, because they're saying, look, this is a government agency who they know that, and I'm not going to be rude, half of the time we're always fighting each other, okay? If this is a government agencies that's saying, trust this quality, trust this industry, right now you can get fresh fish at your port, is the most amazing thing. I shared it all over social media, and I can't tell you, all across the country where people are saying, well, I didn't know, that's great. You know what? Because they trust the DMF, especially, no offense to anyone, your environmentalists out there, et cetera. So they know, I mean, look at the ocean, it's beautiful, et cetera. But when a government agency comes together at this time is the most important thing. So doing these seminars, being together, DMF being on the videos is such a wonderful thing. I'm getting questions is what happens when they do the, you know, the $300 million relief, and where can we go? And I says, rest assured that, you know, the partnership will be doing seminars, we'll be having links, we'll be doing things. So if you can also, out of this, send out to all of your emails, but on social media, everywhere else, that, you know what, you're on top of this, we're here for you. Not only do we do insurance, we're working with the industry, we're working with DMF, you know, we're here for you, and we're working with the political side, you know, your House, your representatives, the Congress, Senate, to make sure that when this bill passes, whenever it goes through, or whatever it may have already, I don't know, something, I just got an email from Maki, 20 million something, I don't know. But the fact is, that you're there. I think that we can all share it, so we know that there is an agency, because they're all looking for my staff at economic, and I'm sure, and listen to, like, you know, Mitchell and all of us who have industry, where do we go? And this is like the perfect link is right here, what you're doing. So I just like to hear other fishermen, what they're saying in other communities and retailers, and so we're doing a slow opening task force. And the first thing we said is this task force has to have the industry in there, because our whole island is industry. So we're thinking of all of you, you know, it's not easy. You know what, you're working hard, they're going fishing, whether it's scallops, lobster, you know, draggers or whatever, it's very difficult. One poor guy was trying to feed somebody, he got his own lobsters that he can take home from a share. And someone wanted to give him money. They said he was selling, and now he has a $750 fine. Poor Michigan Mike, I'm gonna have to go help him. But the fact is, I want to thank you, DMF, in support of those videos and everything else. And I know I worked with Noah too. Thank you so much, everyone. This is really a relief for me as mayor, that I can always say, here, this is what you need to go, here, this is that, and you guys have everything up there. So keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Tom,
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, Tom, there is one more question from David for Troy, and it's, do you plan to extend to fin fish?
So the short answer is yes, probably pretty soon. We right off the bat, we've had so many fishing boats just reach out to us, and we just wanted to ensure that we could figure out a process that worked well and efficiently, and we weren't, you know, overstepping any boundaries with the town, because the town of Fairhaven and New Bedford, the city of New Bedford, have been very supportive. So we just figured before we took on any more boats, we wanted to kind of fine tune the process at which we've done that, which over the last week or two we really have. And this feedback we've been getting for the average consumer coming through is nothing but positive about, you know, the pace at which, you know, cars come through and everything. So there are a few boats that we plan on working with to help them sell their fin fish. And apparently some of them, you know, they've tried this in the past and they just can never, I guess, they can't get the demand for what they can catch, where right now we have the complete opposite. We can't get a catch to keep up with the demand. So probably in the next week or two on our page, people will start seeing different types of fin fish offered from captains in the area that are trusted by, you know, their colleagues in the fishing industry.
Awesome, thank you. How about you, Shireen? Do you plan to move to use some finfish also, or are you just doing the shellfish?
No, we actually are doing a program very similar to Troy's in Chatham as well. We are facilitating a scallop boat direct sales and been doing the same sort of social media side of that. I have in the past worked with my family of weir fishing, my weir fishing business when I owned it. My daughter owns it now. We did off the boat sales for many years on a very low key manner with the boat permit. Presently, she's gearing up her fisheries and has a structure set up that we will help facilitate the marketing side for her. And we have another member of our co-op who has a small hook and line boat who's ready to go squidding and going for mackerel as well. So we definitely see that. We have a monk boat that that we've been working with as well. So the big part is education on some of the different species of fish that aren't typically bought in or sourced locally. We do a lot of shipping our fish to Boston, New York, and overseas. A lot of the species that I've just spoken to are not typically in our fish markets here. Seeing that 75% of our seafood is shipped or was shipped off the Cape. So it's going to be a very exciting thing to market and be able to educate people on different recipes and different seasonality to the sourcing of their seafood. So I'm very excited for that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Shireen. That sounds like some great things happening. We have one other person, Alex. Why don't you let us know what you have to say?
Hopefully I'm coming through on this thing.
We can hear you, Alex.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
Hey,
absolutely. Go ahead.
It was brought up that a video that Dan McKiernan did last week with the speaking on behalf of from the DMF to all of us. I have to tell you, that carried a lot of weight, especially having that on Facebook. Personally, I've known Dan for many, many, many years, and he's been in the trenches. He's worked on a lot of the boats out of here, out of Provincetown. He's worked with a lot of us, especially with the whales when I was involved with lobstering. He put his job on the line a couple times for us. And, he carries a lot of credibility as far as I'm concerned. And just for him to do what he did last week, I really think that's going to help us out a lot. But then on the other hand, like I say, with the EMF, that's great. But I tell you, with this pandemic thing that was going on, and I'm certain Morgan can testify to that. He helped me out quite a bit. That thing, you had to be an MIT graduate to figure that thing out. It wasn't worth it. It really wasn't, as far as I'm concerned, for a one-man operation, a shellfish business. So, I'm just going to struggle along and just keep going the way I'm going and all that. But I wish everybody the best and safe, and I'll keep tuning in.
Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I do have one more question. It can go to Troy and Shireen. How are you guys doing anything to educate people on how to work on whole fish? Some people feel like they don't know what to do with it, how to fillet it, is there any sort of educational process that you might teach them if they buy this fish?
Troy, I can take this first if you don't mind. We're sourcing
No
YouTube
problem.
videos. We have a lot of educational pieces that we've done in the past to show people, do demonstrations at the dock. Also have materials available. There's lots of ways. People are curious and it's fun. But we haven't gotten to a more formal piece to our page yet or to any of our social media. But I'm really inspired to think about what is the best way to do it for ourselves with our brand on it versus a referral on a YouTube video. But there's a lot out there. So showing how to clean squid's probably going to be the funnest one to do. Thank you.
And then if I could add to that as well, that's something, as I said, we're probably going to start working with the finfish boats in the next week or two. it's something I've already talked to with the captains. Myself, I'm an avid fisherman, but I'm not a commercial fisherman. So yeah, I've filleted a few fish in my life, but we actually talked upon the same thing. Instead of, outsourcing other people's videos on YouTube, kind of have a film production friend of mine make a short little clip for whatever fish that will be sold. It'll be the captain showing me how to fillet it, and I'll have the perspective of it will really be one of my first times filleting most of these fish, and it'll kind of just show the people, this is a lot easier than you would think, and it's also a fun thing you could do at your house or with your kids, add to that experience. So that's something that we actually have a new website, very in-depth full website getting built right now that in the next week should be up and running, and that will have links to social media and other videos that we're doing as well. So that's something we've been considering.
Thank you so much. It's great to see how everybody's adapting to this whole new world we're living in, and we'd love to have all these resources for us and for our communities available. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and I think we're set with all of our questions and go from there. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. We did have one other person. Yeah, there she is, Angela Sanfilippo. Let me let the group know that you're ready to share your story. Go ahead. Are you there, Angela? Oh. We must be having some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Perfect.
What it's just a statement telling Story, Shireen, and anybody else that this really gives you the opportunity to also tell people to try to use the whole fish, not to fillet it. It could be cooked as a whole fish, and you get so much more out of it than when you fillet it. We know that's not the typical thing that we do around this area, but if in New Orleans they could serve a whole little bass and people eat it, it could be done here as well. And I'd be happy at some point whenever you want to share some recipes with you. This is really, I feel very strongly about that, because when you fillet a fish, you lose a lot.
Angela, that's really great. You're right. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I think that's it for questions and comments. At the risk of sounding cheesy, our lines are open if anybody has an additional comment or question that they want to share with the group. And if not, let's see here. I'm just going to scroll through, see if anybody, there we go. Kate, why don't you go ahead and let us know what's on your mind?
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfectly.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm Kate Masery. I work for the nonprofit Eating with the Ecosystem. I know a number of you, Shireen and a few of the others, but I just wanted to say that we've been building on our website a bunch of resources that include how to fillet a whole fish, but I'm also adding a whole recipe page that is not up there yet, but will be up there hopefully by the end of this week, that will include whole fish recipes. And we have some other kind of videos and things like that for how to make chowder and how to fry skate wing and a bunch of different other resources. So we're happy to share other people's resources. So if you guys create videos, we're happy to link those on our site that direct them to your sites and give you guys credit, of course, but we're also happy to share the ones that we're creating. So if that's helpful to anybody, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That is very helpful. Just as I had hoped, and just as all of us had hoped, creating a dialogue between the fishermen, talking about filleting, non-filleting, everything, sharing of resources. That's exactly what we want to do here. So we're thankful that everybody has joined us here today. Let me open up one last time to see if there's anybody else that has any questions or comments. Looking at no questions, no comments. Well, I think now would be a great time to let you know that in the event you do want to share your story, not on here or with other people, or if you have any comments or concerns, definitely reach out to our navigators. As you can see, our latest slide gives you their contact information for all of them. Oh, just scroll past it. There we go. So by all means, if you have any questions about anything we talked about today or talked about in our previous webinars, by all means, reach out to them. And that's a great segue to let you know that all our webinars are up on the fpcovid19.org site. You scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the YouTube link. Just click on that, and the past 3 episodes are there. And this one will be up within the next 24 hours, I believe. One thing to be aware of, too, is that we also have a variety of resources here. I'm going to keep this up for a little bit so you can take advantage of this, but the slides will also be available on the COVID site as well. I want to take a moment to thank everybody for being here today, our panelists, of course, and all of you out there. We're doing a lot of great things, and even though these are challenging times, it's really cool to feel the spirit of everybody coming together and getting things done in a way that's going to be helpful for all. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Dan Orchard, who's going to close us out.
Great, thanks, Tom. And thanks again to everybody in the fishing community for listening and providing us with this interesting feedback. Thanks again to our panelists and staff for putting it together. You know, it's evident from the panelists today that this is a community effort to link fishermen with consumers. Troy and Shireen are not fishing, but they're supporting fishermen. And when you're fishing, you have enough to do just to go fishing. You need this level of support from the shore, and that's happening around Massachusetts. So we appreciate that, and we'll look for more ways to share information about that and provide resources as we can to help you through this. We're going to keep providing information and look for our emails and check our webpage over the next week for our next webinar. So thank you again for everybody, and have a great day.